Team Poudre Valley 206, medical stage at 457 North Smith Street. 457 North Smith. Respond on Channel 5. Channel 5 is 5.
When dispatched to an active shooter event, expect limited and vague information from dispatch, at least initially. Dispatch will most likely be overwhelmed with 911 calls. You may have little information to go on to determine what you are responding to. Since these call types can come into firehouses in many ways, it may not be aired as an active violence or mass casualty incident. It may start simply as an uncoded medical to assist police. When dispatch information warrants the possible use of ballistic personal protective equipment, the expectation is to don it prior to leaving the station. It will provide protection while en route and will allow you to be in a mission-ready state to go to work once you've arrived to an incident. Again, dispatch information may be sketchy at first and may not immediately reveal that you will need ballistic PPE. Captains need to take the time to read the call notes on the MTT prior to leaving the station. If it turns out the call is in close proximity to the station, remaining in the bay or on the pad may be appropriate. If it is determined that the call involves active violence, captains must request a battalion chief to join the call if one is not already assigned. They are the communication link for law enforcement, and this is very important for unified operations. Captains must also consider a safe staging location identified by law enforcement, or if not yet determined, a position that will not endanger the crew.
Hector, get that gear ready.
Once en route, the captain and crew should begin to consider safe routes into the area and possible locations for establishing staging with police and EMS. Using your map books or MDTs can assist with location identification, including possible areas for a casualty collection point. Ensure communication is established with the battalion chief en route to confirm location of staging areas and operational needs. Upon arrival to a safe staging location, observe the area for possible threats and don't hesitate to move to another location if safety appears compromised. If not dressed in appropriate ballistic PPE, the time to do so is now. Do not wear bunker gear if you suspect that you will be involved in rescue task force operations or working in a casualty collection point. Bunker gear will slow you down, and crews can't afford to compromise efficiency during an active violence incident. Captains need to ensure they discuss possible roles their crew may be assigned to and remind them they will likely be working in a warm zone that could change to a hot zone without notice. If anyone sees anything suspicious, notify each other and communicate to the incident commander. If necessary and safety is questionable, request a police escort to the staging area, but understand the police officers may not be available to help immediately, or you may need to move quickly with them as they are trying to move to their assigned location. Prior to the first engine's arrival, police may have already begun carrying out victims and placing them in a safe area. This may become by default the casualty collection point unless it is not a secured area. If needed, position apparatus between known threat and victims to create barrier or cover, ultimately constructing a makeshift casualty collection point. If assigned to a CCP, bring your med bag and other equipment including trauma kit, mega movers, and suction. Your assignment in the CCP will be to triage patients and treat immediate life threats. Your job function is to render more advanced aid and assist getting patients transported as quickly as possible. A PVH or UCH supervisor may join you to become the transport unit leader. Once a staging area is identified, fire personnel should report to that location where they will meet up with law enforcement officers. They will be paired up to form a rescue task force, or RTF. A rescue task force may consist of 2 to 4 law enforcement officers with 2 to 4 firefighters. Each will have an RTF designation like RTF-1 or RTF-2. The team lead on each RTF will be a police officer who will communicate directly to a tactical operations group supervisor. This supervisor, who is a law enforcement officer, will work side by side with the rescue group supervisor, who will be a captain or a battalion chief. A designated firefighter on the team will communicate directly with the rescue group supervisor to update patient coding and estimated time of rescue. When deployed to a location, notify the rescue group supervisor prior to entering a warm zone. If you are assigned to a rescue task force team, be prepared to operate and function efficiently. When deployed, the RTF will move to an assigned location for a known rescue. During movement, you are under the command of the police officer in charge on the RTF. However, you will be expected to communicate with the rescue group supervisor. While moving with law enforcement, stay with them in a tight formation. Time is critical. We need to get victims out of the scene in order to give them a fighting chance at survival, so move with purpose. When entering a warm zone, actively look for viable victims.
Hey, can you hear me?
Announce who you are and that you're here to help.
Can you hear me?
Assess the first victim you come to. Do not skip victims. Do not treat the suspect.
Can you hear me?
Keep moving to the innocent victim. If a victim is clearly deceased, cross their legs. This is a universal sign that the patient is code black. Nothing should delay the removal of the patient except for any critical life threats such as uncontrolled bleeding. Quickly package the victim on a mega mover and notify the team lead when you are ready to move out. Inform the rescue group supervisor of the estimated time of your arrival to the ambulance exchange point or CCP. Confirm the patient's condition with the medic. After patient care is handed over, restock your equipment and be prepared to redeploy as an RTF. We hope this overview was helpful in preparing you for the Rescue Task Force training coming up in July.
An important part of the Rescue Task Force concept is carrying your victim outside of the problem. A couple different ways that can be done. Ideally, we'd like to use a mega mover and deploy that as our source of movement. However, if that doesn't work, we might have to do an arm and leg type of carry, which can be done with a 2-person or 3-person crew, and we will demonstrate both of those to you now. So preferably, if we have the option to carry with a mega mover, that's what we'd like to do. Quick deployment of the mega mover is critical. So as you come out, you're gonna throw it open, making sure that the stripes are gonna be on the downside. We're gonna roll the patient, slide the mega mover underneath, roll him back, and then we're gonna quickly scoop, grabbing the straps. The head person, it's important for him if he can, we're gonna go feet first. Head person's gonna walk forward. Everyone's gotta be walking the same direction. We can't be trying to back out. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, we're lifting, and we're gonna go feet first, out the door. Everyone's facing the same direction. For a 2-person carry, a couple of important factors. The first thing we're gonna do is with our victim laying on his back, we're gonna use the guy at the feet to pull him forward. So he's gonna grab hands here, as Tom does with our victim. He's gonna grab hands and pull him up. I'm gonna get behind the victim and grab one arm. We're gonna let the other arm dangle like we would normally in a normal search and rescue victim removal. Tom at the feet now is gonna cross both legs, and he's gonna lift the underneath leg, either scooping the heel or he can grab the pant leg if he needs to. On the count of 3, we're gonna lift. Obviously, I'm gonna lift first at the head because that's where all the majority of the weight is, and Tom's gonna lift with the feet after I get him going. 1, 2, 3. And we're off and moving.
So in an active shooter situation, there may be multiple casualties per rescue task force group, so you may end up dragging a casualty out on your own. So we're going to demonstrate several carries in a case where you may have to drag out a casualty on your own. So this technique is not going to be that much different than what you would do in a normal structure fire with an arm bar. The big differences are, of course, you're able to see and you can actually stand up. So you're going to sit the patient up, get them in an arm bar like you would rescuing a victim in a structure fire, but you're able to stand up and move backwards quite a bit faster. So we'll demonstrate here. Casualty on the ground, you can hook, pivot up, grab them by the arm, This is where you'd normally scoot backwards in a fire. In this case, you can actually stand up and drag the patient. Another option for a single person drag is if you have the patient on a mega mover. This can act as a sled by putting your arm through the first loop, grabbing the second loop on both sides. You can stand up and you can drag the patient. So this is just a brief review on TC3, which is Tactical Combat Casualty Care. The only thing that we want you doing in the hot zone is hemorrhage control. So you won't be doing anything with airways, chest seals, etc. Our chest pouch here only has 2 interventional type materials in there. You have a tourniquet and you have hemostatic agents, in this case combat gauze. Those are the only 2 things that go in our pouch. We've already had crews stuff things in there like NPAs and chest seals. We don't worry about that in a hot zone. You only want to do hemorrhage control. You're supposed to prep your tourniquets so that there's only 1 piece of Velcro through the buckle. There is a double buckle on some of the models. The newer CAT tourniquets only have space for it to go through one side of the buckle, and that should suffice even for a high and tight large thigh tourniquet. So prep it so that it's nice and large, so that if you have to, you can get it over someone's shoe or boot for a high thigh tourniquet. Prep these and fold them so that they're used quickly, because these come in 2 layers of packaging, and you don't want to have to mess with packaging while you're on scene doing this for real. So have them out of the package, prepped and ready to go. When you get to your casualty, if you have a conscious casualty, obviously you can ask them where you hit. Unconscious casualty, you're doing the fastest head-to-toe assessment that you've ever done, and you're only looking for life-threatening bleeds. You're only looking for big, major arterial bleeds. So say this patient has an arterial bleed high in the brachial artery here. First thing we're going to do is direct pressure. You're going to throw a tourniquet on. You can use tourniquet as step number 1 when it comes to tactical combat casualty care. You don't have to worry about direct pressure. You don't have to worry about combat gauze first. You can go straight to the tourniquet. Notice I'm going to put that as high as I can on his shoulder because we're not entirely sure where this wound is. I'm not going to take the time to take his clothes off and completely identify and expose the wound. We're just going to assume that we're getting this tourniquet as high and tight as possible, and we can reassess and reapply once the patient gets to the casualty collection point. So we're going to crank this down. Hopefully that stops arterial bleeding. If it doesn't, then we have step 2, which is our combat gauze, and we can just stuff this in the wound. Open the package, stuff it in the wound. That's our hemorrhage control. That's all we're doing. We're not worrying about airway. We're not worrying about occlusive seals for chest wounds. We're just doing hemorrhage control and getting the patient out of there.